Hello friends, welcome to the amazing world of stories and why we tell them from Kulture Katha. Last week I had ended the story of the epic with the curse on Pandu's head playing out, leading to his pitiable death. According to the epic, when Kunti comes to know about the death of Pandu, she actually claims that as Pandu's eldest wife and as his dharma patni, that is a co-participant in all his endeavours, she must follow him to the land of the dead. But Madri, Pandu's second wife, disagrees and mentions 3 reasons why she should go instead of Kunti. She appeals to Kunti to allow her to follow her husband to the land of the dead, as she had been the cause of his death. You may remember this from my previous video. The second reason Madri gives is a bit curious when she says that as Pandu died before she could satisfy his desire, she can't let him go to the land of Yama unsatisfied, and therefore she must follow him wherever he is headed. Presenting her third reason, Madri argues why Kunti should remain behind to take care of their children, as she herself would never be able to treat Kunti's children as her own, which she believes Kunti would be able to. Presenting these 3 arguments, Madri convinces Kunti to let her join Pandu in his death. The epic then goes on to say that Madri entered her husband's funeral pyre. Now, this apparently unimportant episode that people reading the epic usually ignore is actually very interesting for several reasons. Firstly, Madri's case is the only case of sahagamana, meaning to go away together with one's partner, that the epic mentions. There are several widows we encounter in the epic, starting from Satyavati, Ambika, Ambalika, and of course a whole lot of them at the end of the epic when all the Kuru warriors die in the war. None of these widowed women choose to end their lives to join their husbands in the netherworld. But then, why does Madri immolate herself along with her husband? Historians note that the earliest evidence of Sahagamana, or Sati as it's come to be referred to later, was not in common prevalence till about 1500 years ago, that is the end of the Gupta era. In fact, it became more widespread only with the Islamic invasions, particularly among the Rajput women who chose Jauhar over dishonor. So, there is no historical evidence of this barbaric practice having been prevalent in the Mahabharata times. Here, I would like to remind you of one of my previous videos on junior Levirate, where I had talked about a particular Rigvedic custom. According to this custom, when a man died, his wife was made to lie down next to him on the funeral pyre. But she was not burnt along with the dead man. Instead, the dead man's younger brother held out his hand to her, asking her to rise from the pyre, telling her not to end her life but to continue her life on this earth. So the ritual was purely metaphoric, showing a symbolic death and rebirth of a woman before she starts life afresh with her husband's younger brother. If Sahagamana or Sati was not a prevalent practice in the time of the epic, why is Madri shown to immolate herself? When I posed this question to a scholar, an eminent scholar on the epic, he came up with a curious theory. He said that Madri did not possibly share the same wifely status as Kunti. Unlike Kunti, who married Pandu in a Swayamvara, Madri was bought by Bhishma for marriage to Pandu in exchange for several gifts and riches. This kind of wedding, called the Asura wedding, was considered inferior to the Swayamvara marriage. The professor also pointed out how Madri's sons Nakula and Sahadeva did not enjoy the same prominence in the epic as Kunti's sons. And you may remember how the twins were born as the sons of the Ashwini Kumaras, who were considered the gods of the lower varnas of the society. So, was Madri's inferior status similar to that of a slave, that she was cremated along with her master as one of his belongings, his property? Is it something that's been overwritten by the redactors as times changed? Or was it Madri's own decision to give up her life because she felt guilty over her husband's death, as she felt responsible for it? These are questions for which we may never know the answers. But what makes this debate more interesting is that the epic itself presents two versions of Madri's story. We have seen version 1, where she immolates herself. In this version of the story, the rishis of the forest perform the last rites for Pandu. But in the following verses, the epic presents a contradictory version of the same story. Here, the rishis decide to take the mortal remains of Pandu and Madri to Hastinapura for final rites. Kunti and the Pandavas also join them, and after walking for days through the forest, they reach Hastinapura, where they are received by a grieving Dhritarashtra. Talking about Pandu to him, the rishis mention how Madri joined Pandu on the funeral pyre and gave up her life. And they request Dhritarashtra to arrange for the final rites to be performed for the bodies. What follows is a detailed description of the final rites performed for Madri and Pandu in Hastinapura. So the picture that the epic presents on this episode is quite confusing. If Pandu and Madri had been burnt on the funeral pyre in the forest, why is there a mention of their bodies being brought back to Hastinapura? Well, once again, we have no definitive answers. For an epic that has had a very long period of evolution, such inconsistencies were probably unavoidable. And it's precisely these gaps in the narrative that opens up our gateways to explore the truth hidden in between. So can stay with me on this epic journey as we explore more of the amazing and cryptic story ever told. Till we meet again, and start bye-bye. Take care.